Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And it's been
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
And we're going to just jump right in on Umbrella Academy Season 2. This is like the only episode where we're recording it, and then it's going to go out like the next day, as opposed to what we've been doing, which is all this, hoarding episodes to release. So
Well,
this is exciting.
Yeah, this is exciting. This is the first episode that we've done in a long time about new content, and we can't wait to get it out there. So let's just launch into it. Overall, like, where do you want to start with this discussion?
I think it might be good if we we can say whether or not we like the season, but I think the easiest way to do this is to kind of just go from, Umbrella Academy character, like member 1 through 7, and just see where that leaves us at the end of it. If we just go like character by character to see, just using the 7, to see how we feel about them, what they did, because I liked the season a lot. I don't really have anything negative to say. I know that people kind of were like, oh, they just tried to stop an apocalypse again, but I guess that's what I always thought it would be, considering the first season was a cliffhanger. It wasn't, the first season wasn't like, and then we fixed it. It was, oh shit, the earth is going to explode. Let's get out of here.
And what was the result after that? Like, that was the biggest thing. Like, what was the after result, I thought. And exploring that in this season was pretty much the thing. I think them finding out that the world is going to end again in this season is something that they caught them off guard. So I don't know why.
I thought the idea was like, the idea is that 5 is trying to get them to not fixate on all the stuff they want to change in the past, and just be like, let's just avoid the world blowing up again here, because that's why we left the first time. And then I thought it was a nice natural progression of like, okay, and then they learned that they can actually stop that first apocalypse from happening. So I liked it. I thought that was a nice continuation. It made it feel like everything mattered, like they were still building off of stuff.
See, it's weird that you say that, because I feel a little bit of the opposite. Once you start learning more about the Commission in this, I start feeling like nothing they do really kind of matters, in the sense where the Commission's job is just to maintain that course line of history. So, like, I know we're jumping ahead to different characters, or we're going to be jumping around to different characters, but number 2, Diego, is obsessed with preventing the JFK assassination. And, ultimately, like, learning about the Commission thing and then learning about this is just, do you feel like the father in this context was given enough warning to kind of dupe them, or was that guy always meant to be that kind of person, or like, what is going on there? Because it seems like the course of history just continues the exact same way.
No, he did dupe them. He just didn't think they were actually still going to go through with killing JFK, because he wanted to. I think initially he was like, okay, this is what makes them go to the moon, and that was basically his whole thing, is he wants to go to the moon. But I still think that meeting with his kids made him be like, oh, maybe I don't have to kill him to do that. Like, he doesn't need to die for me to get to the moon. Like, that was part of his issue with them when he came to be like, why did you do that? And they're like, shut up, you don't have any say in this. And again, the Commission is a different function than those 12 men.
Yes, they're very different. But
I just think your criticism is like mixing them together. because that
Could be.
it,
Could very well be.
those two things are two separate functions.
Mm.
Those 12 men have their own agenda. The commission is just to keep things on track,
Right.
and they've got their own issues.
Right.
What with the I don't remember her name, Kate Walsh's character. She's doing
The handler.
Yes, the handler has got her own ideas of what she can use the commission to do, but the commission isn't anything really other than keeping things on track. And those 12 men, the board, are doing their own thing.
Right.
But yeah, I think I do know as I'm talking through it that they are technically connected, but it is two separate functions. It is like for storytelling, that board is actually trying to do what the handler is doing, which is why she's taking them out. But the commission itself isn't trying to do things one way or the other.
Right. I just think they're, well, I don't know, because I got really confused with that through this watch through, knowing that it was just like, okay, at the end, the revelation, when the commission was like, oh, we're meant to do that line of dialogue, and that they're to
you cut out. You're gonna have to say that
history
again.
And all that kind of stuff, and then multiple times it's like, yeah, no, but it's hello.
Yeah, you cut out.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So you're gonna have to say that point again, just because I feel like you said something important and it didn't come through in the audio.
Gotcha. So I feel like in this situation, the commission, like when you find out that the commission is there to keep this course, and then you have multiple events even within that organization where, Kate Walsh's character hires Five to take out the entire board, and you're like, oh, history could change, and then you have that final thing at the end of the season. It feels like a lot of it just really is
to be clear, her taking out the board is not thing to do with changing history.
Right.
She's just trying to take control.
Meant that you feel like you can get that you get that sense that history could change, or I got that sense.
No, she was just saying they only meet at certain times. So why don't you go back to that time where they all have met already and you can kill them? But that isn't changing history. That is because the handler, the board, they all operate outside of that.
Gotcha.
And so to me, that was just, you need to kill them so that I can just do what I want to do. That wasn't really changing the course of history. That's just forming her future.
Right. I see.
But yeah, let's go through these characters, because basically this season they're stuck in the 60s for the most part, and they all landed in different years, and then Five lands in 63, and that's when things start to kick off, right? So Luther, he's hanging out with the guy who ends up killing Lee Harvey Oswald. Which is something I forgot by the end of the season. When he picks up the gun, I'm like, what, is he going to kill himself? And then everything I read after, I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to either kill Luther, who he thinks did it, or Lee Harvey Oswald. I was like, oh, okay, got it.
Right.
But that's his thing, is he's stuck in this time, and he decides well, I can make money doing this. But it does seem like he's not well off. He's basically staying at a version of the YMCA. And I think it's just because he's of the grace of being under that gangster that everyone is afraid of. They're like, we'll give you a room. Because once he's not on good terms with that guy, they're like, you're out. Sorry, you got to get out of here.
Yeah, one is clearly he has not adapted well to the society. He's very, very much, in my mind, given up. And I don't know if that's a product of him being there the longest and the most isolated, not having found a community within it, or just the idea that he felt so betrayed by his father in the first one, because he was so loyal in the first season, that he felt so betrayed that he's just like, I give up, basically. What does any of it matter? He does have some dialogue throughout that suggests throughout the season that kind of suggests that he does not care, or rejects the throne of leadership throughout this season. But he end up, and he gives it off to Five a lot more, and things end up being what they are throughout the season with Five. And I think it's very, very interesting, his role on this.
I do think he's just a lonely person in general. That's he is on the moon in the first season when we first meet him, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of just his thing. Like, I think he's used to being like, all right, like this is just what I have to
Mhm.
do now. I'm
He is
isolated.
very used to being alone. Yeah, because like the first season, you're right, because they go to show you that he's the only one still living at the home, following the dad's orders and
Mhm.
being, I guess, the Umbrella Academy. He's the only Umbrella
Because he's the one
person
that's like,
left, I guess.
because he's the one that's keeping Vanya locked up, right? Like that's like kind of what
Yes.
he takes charge of that.
Yes.
Which I did like his scene with Vanya.
Oh yeah.
When he seeks her out. I know we're gonna probably be overlapping on some stuff, but
Oh, we're definitely all over
just
the place with this for sure.
like just still following the Luther stuff is that I think that's his first thing is that the husband of the woman that Vanya is staying with joins or comes to his club and he has to kick him out. And then
Yeah.
he is like when he goes to return the wallet, he sees Vanya and he's like, oh, and you think he's gonna well, he did go in to shoot her, and I thought like he was gonna do something to bring out her powers like right there, but instead he's like, stop
Yeah.
talking, I just want to say I'm sorry, like you
Yeah.
didn't deserve what happened to you, I'm part of why it happened to you, and I'm really sorry. And I did like that idea of just her being like, I mean, I don't know who you are, like I don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
so like I'm just happy someone knows me now. Like,
Yeah. I thought that was, I mean, for what it was, the device of Vanya having dementia this whole season, needing to find her memory back, it was what it was. But to me, that whole interaction, it was definitely for Luther. And you know, I think at some point they're going to have to revisit that, which is going to be some sort of really awkward kind of interaction. But it just felt there's a part of it that felt like, oh crap, you don't know what's going on. This lessens the blow because of how much Vanya did in the last season. It felt like the rest of the group had amnesia too, or he was so lonely at that point where he was just like,
oh, I
listen,
disagree.
I'll yeah, you think you
I
disagree with
I
it?
don't think it lessens the
Yeah.
blow at all because part of the tension of second season is they all know what she's capable of, so they're still doing
Mm.
what they were doing in the first season, which is oh no, don't do anything, it's fine. Like
Right.
especially when they're at the dinner and they're like, no, don't do your power, and she's like, I got it. It's like they're still like before they were doing it just out of habit, and now they're like, no, we actually know what's gonna happen, and so they're
Yeah.
all still like, as much as Luther wants to be like, hey, I'm sorry that this happened to you, he's still being a dick by being like, no, don't do anything, like
Yeah.
I don't trust you, and she is. And what I like about that tension is that she is so eager to be around them. It's like, yeah, I don't think it lessens the blow at all. It's you understand that she wants to desperately again be a part of what they're doing.
Yes.
And as she's had time to kind of not heal from what she did for her family, but like she's had a moment to be with people who appreciate her and she's found some kind of peace in herself. It's them chipping away at that again by coming back and like reintroducing all that stuff to her. And I feel like that hurts a bit more that she's like had some version of like, I know what like stability can feel like. And now like it's that ticking time bomb of like, okay, what's going to be the trigger that like sets her off again when she realizes like the full magnitude of everything.
Right. And I guess I never really considered it from Vanya's perspective because I considered it more from Luther's perspective, where it's just like, okay, and I think it'll because I definitely am not remembering every single detail, having watched this over the course of a week. But Luther, when he meets with Vanya, he does recognize that she has lost her memory or doesn't recognize.
I don't know if he
the
trusts
events.
that she does. I don't know. He's just like, I'm gonna say this, but I don't think anyone fully believes she's lost her memory when they first meet her. I don't think anyone's like, oh, okay. I think everyone's like, why are you like, what are you doing? Stop. Just, I have something to say to you. I don't know why you're pretending like you don't know who I am. And again, that's what I like. It's that, yes, they can do the performative like apology or like, oh, I'm so happy to see you, but it's still like, I'm gonna keep you at a distance because I don't trust what you're doing. And there's the added frustration of like, and why are you pretending like you don't know who I am? And so that all plays into them being like, because you do know what you did, and you're probably trying to be like, oh, let's forget about it, guys. I think it's way more interesting that way. I don't think it lessens anything.
No, it just, to me, it felt like from Luther's perspective, was it kind of accomplish, like, I apologize and I didn't have to deal with the blowback or whatever. Is it that kind of one-sided apology? You know what I mean? It's just like every now and then you see someone. That's a rather dramatic example, so I'm not going to say it. But it just, whether or not it was the conflict that Vanya needed to get out at Luther too for his part in suppressing her, you know. I don't know. It didn't. Maybe cheapened wasn't, or lessened is not the right descriptor, but whether or not it was what it could have been was what I'm kind of looking for, that really head-on addressing it. But the sidestepping of the addressing, or not directly the addressing, is very, very interesting. I agree with you, because it creates a different kind of tension altogether, because throughout this season, it's not like any of them tell her what she's actually capable of either. So they're just like, why are they babying?
No, they
the
say all
time?
the time, "You blew up Earth." They say that a lot to her.
Oh crap! Right.
There's even like an emotional point with Allison, I believe it is, where she's like,
"Oh
I'm the one who did it. I'm the reason, right?"
Right. Yeah, because I'm forgetting everyone's. Like, for me, her biggest thing, and I know we're overlapping.
See, this is why I wanted to do like character by character, because I think you'll start to see how everything plays out that way. It's easier than trying to like be like, what was the whole story? Like, I think it's easier to chip it away.
The whole story is very confusing once again. Okay, so we'll focus back on that. So you're exactly right.
I'm with you on the whole Luther thing. I like it because I did feel like that was a genuine apology that he wanted to get out. But I think what is good about that is, just because he genuinely was sorry about that doesn't mean that he feels genuinely, and maybe it is just a guilt thing, like he feels this guilt about it and he wanted to say something. It doesn't mean that he necessarily changed how he treated her until the end. That end scene, again, we'll talk about it when we're talking about Vanya in particular, but like that end scene where they go to the barn, I think that is them finally like coming together. But what I liked was when Luther initially sees her at the barn and you think he's going to shoot her, and instead he pulls out the wallet to just be like, hey, this is this. And he says, he doesn't go like, you did this, this, and this. He's just like, listen, I'm sorry. I feel bad for what happened. I like that he doesn't follow that up by being the brother to her that he should have been. He still is like, and I'm keeping my distance again. And also, anytime we do meet, I'm not going to trust you to do the right thing.
Yeah, I guess it's a very interesting situation where he's in, where even in this season he's being controlled by someone like the gangster, but really he should be finding his own way, but he kind of just fell back into that old role of, I'm going to be someone's muscle. Literally, very literally. He fell back into it when only when he was fired he was forced to come out of it. So it was like, his story is hard for me because his growth was fully dependent on everyone else is getting there, and because he was the first to get there, it was delayed for so long, and it felt like he gave by that time it felt like he had absolutely given up. So it was very interesting for him to have that same story beat, but with a different direction altogether.
I mean, I would say everyone's,
when it came down to him breaking out.
Yeah, I would say everyone's growth is dependent on everyone being there.
Yeah,
except for maybe Allison, who seemed like she kind of just had her own. It seemed like she just kind of she could have just had her own thing going, other than. Yeah. And again, I liked it. We'll talk about her when I don't even remember what numbers. I should pull up what numbers they are, because I only know Luther and Diego are for sure 1 and 2. But
yes.
And yeah, I would say I can't really fault them on the Luther thing, because everyone needed everybody to be there.
Right.
It's like, that's the whole point of the show, is that they've been kept apart either by their dad or now time and space. That's why they've never fully been able to do what they need to do, because they've always, even when they were a team, the fact that they're numbered, the fact that all those mind guys are played, they were still separate. And that was the significance of that first season dance thing. They're all in the same house. They're separate though. They're in their own rooms, but they're still what could have happened if they were all together and dancing together and happy. But so I would say that's just the nature of the show. You might not like that storytelling device, but that is how it works, is that
Mm.
It's the fact that they all need to be together
Yeah.
before they can.
Well, yeah. Yeah. It's multiple conflicts, and yeah, I'm seeing that now. Sorry. Let's go down with
Number
definitely
2.
one. No, we're on to 2 now. Okay.
Oh no, we can still talk about Luther. I felt like that was his thing, is that
Well, yeah.
he was the muscle, and he realized that. I mean, again, you're right that it wasn't something he came to on his own. It was that he got fired, and then he'd realized. But I still think that was because he was actually left in a position where he's like, well, now I have to be with family, and that's what gets him to pull himself out of his rut.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was kind of like, we can always come back to him as we talk about how he intersects with everyone else, but I feel like that is kind of his arc throughout this season, is that he's I mean, the other part of it is when he finds out that Allison is married, then he just goes even further down.
Oh yeah, that when he found out she was married, that really broke me a little bit, because that was really, really tough for me, because it was tough for me to see him really give up, and then have to come back and then form that over again.
Mm-hmm.
He had a lot of struggles this season.
That was rough.
It was definitely rough for his character. I felt for his character a lot.
Because I was like, man, you just got to win this fight. And he's like, no, hit me. I'm like, oh no, here we go.
Yeah. That scene, it was like, oh man, brutal.
But yeah, that's kind of his thing. And then and he does. I mean, we can talk about all the stuff he does with 5 when we get to 5.
Yep.
But yeah, I probably would agree with you that he's probably the weaker of the storylines, but I also understand that that's kind of by design, I feel like.
Yeah, because his storyline is very, very much internal and emotionally driven versus everyone else from not everyone else, but many other people, either from the main narrative or their narrative, have very, very consequential kind of things. Like for his story, it's just like, okay, well, you're with a gang, and you're the muscle for the gang. You obviously know, like, well, this can't continue all season. This can't be the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the stuff with 2, like Diego,
I still don't know why he's called the Kraken.
I agree with you. I really feel like Ben should be the Kraken.
Yeah.
It makes so, like, what the hell? Like, why? It just makes no sense that he's the Kraken.
But anyway, he's the Kraken, and I guess this is the first season where I'm like, oh, he can control metal. Like, I genuinely had no idea what his power was.
Yeah. No, you know what? Honestly, in the Wikipedia, it says he has the ability to control. Oh no, wait. The trajectory of anything he throws, usually knives. So it was just like interesting.
But I guess at the end, he's able to control stuff that's thrown at him.
Yeah, it's also like a good question of in this season whether or not they are changing some powers, or some of them are learning more about their powers.
I think some of them are definitely upgrading or like evolving.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, in the case of Ben, when we'll get there, we definitely know he's evolving his powers and all that kind of stuff, or evolving what he's capable of doing as a spirit. Anyways, back to
Kraken. So he's got an interesting storyline, because I really liked Lila. I liked that he was just like, you meet him and he gets caught and he's in the asylum. And just that hero complex, and I like that they kept driving at that. They're like, because that was the first season. He was the only one that was still doing like crime fighting in that sense, even in the first season. And then he gets a reset, and he's just like, he just jumps right back into it. He's like, nope, I'm gonna stop the assassination. Like, I can do it. And I like that they're like, yeah, he's like Batman, but like shittier. Like, just think Batman and then aim lower.
Yeah.
But I like that it was.
Yeah,
I liked that, especially where, like, because I forgot like his relationship with that robot mom. I think her name's Grace. I love like when he meets her at the party, and it's just like all bets are off. Like, he completely drops everything, just like goes over to her. He's like, hi.
Yeah, his character to me is it's very interesting to watch because you have those really, really big emotional moments, but then also frustrations with the character of like, why are you doing that right now? You have a job, and that's what makes his character so interesting, right? It's kind of
Mhm.
like the Star-Lord nature of everything. It's just like, oh,
I
you're
agree.
screwing up right now. You're being emotional right now. You're just being ragey, and then all like even like I love the asylum where Lila was like they kind of have this playful banter, and then he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pretend or act like I'm better just to try to skip the 90-day thing. He's like, no, but wait, you don't understand. He just freaks out immediately. He loses his cool when he knows like no matter what he's not gonna get his way. It's
Yeah.
like this temper tantrumy aspect of him that makes it really, really fun to watch, but also like you're dumb. But
Yeah.
this season, I really felt bad for him, which as opposed to just annoyed, because he was just getting heart strung around and with by what's her face?
Lila.
No, not by Lila, by
Oh,
Kate
the
Walsh, the handler, because
handler. I don't
Lila.
know why I keep forgetting her name.
Yeah,
I love that the
yeah,
handler was like, yeah, I need you to kill Diego. Like, I do not
yeah,
want my daughter with him. Like, I just
yeah,
can't.
yeah.
She's like, no chance. Like, Lila, you got to keep Five alive, but I do not, like, I cannot abide you being with Diego. He's the worst.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that she genuinely loved Diego. I thought like it again because she's not one of the main seven. I feel like we can talk about the Lila and Diego stuff. Just
Yes.
like because I genuinely didn't think she was connected. I was just like, oh, this is. I thought maybe like, oh, maybe she has powers. I was like because
Yeah.
they bring it up like, how could we be the only seven? So
Mm-hmm.
like the way she kept sticking with them at first, like, and I think it's a pretty early reveal that she's the handler's daughter.
Yeah.
But I mean, in so much as they're Hargreaves kids, but like I was just like, oh, like I didn't realize she was like in on this like the whole time. I was just like, oh, like she's such a good energy like in those first couple of episodes where she's like,
Yeah.
you're just like, oh shit, like you got to keep her around, like she's saving you. And I did not realize her power was being able to mimic all of their powers.
Yeah.
I like that ending. I was just like, fuck, like I should have seen it coming because they give you so many hints like throughout. But I just was like, that's amazing. And we'll get to it. I think with other characters, but like I really like the Lila and Diego stuff.
The Lila and Diego stuff was definitely one of the stronger things going for this season. It was one of the crazier elements, just because we talk about the nature of people having fun, and she definitely has fun with the character. She's a fun person to watch on screen, and that what she does together with Diego makes so much sense of why it's a very believable, like, oh, I very much believe why you would fall for someone like Diego, because like they mimic each other in the sense where it's like pure emotion explosions all the time. And
except for she's like a smart person in addition.
Yes.
Like she can be like ragey at sometimes, I feel.
Yep.
Maybe, but like she's smart, so like she can like maneuver way better than he can.
Correct. I feel like the admiration or love comes from the idea that Diego's purely unleashed, and she wants to be that way, but she can't because of the handler and all that kind of stuff, and the stuff she wants to do. But her real personality shines out in those first couple episodes when you see her with Diego in the institution. And I really, really enjoy that and how they grow and develop together. Her story arc had the best thing.
And I love when she tried to get him a job at the commission. I was like,
yeah,
oh man, because I honestly was like, she's gotta like stop liking him at a certain point, right? And then like she like goes against her mom to be like, no, I'm gonna get him a job here. This will work just fine.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, I feel so bad for you, Lila. Like you were about to be so disappointed.
Yeah. So
but
funny.
A big scene for me was when they have that dinner with Hargreaves and he makes Diego stutter again, and I'm like, I forgot about the stuttering, but like that is so powerful. Like the way he just can't, like none of them can deal with the dad.
Yeah.
I think Five can because he's got so much like experience away from them and from the dad, but like they just can't deal with the dad at all. None of them are like good enough to like fight back against him.
Yeah, I completely missed that that note of Diego having his stutter back around the dad and only the dad again. I completely missed that, but it was a great call out to that detail. Yeah, the dad throughout this season was, oh my god, well, we got to get there too, unless it's
Yeah, we can. I'll use him as the eighth person.
Yeah, I mean, through the overlaps and all that kind of stuff. He's very interesting in this season as well. But yeah, oh god, Diego had some very, a lot of highs and lows for me. Because at some points, for me, I was just annoyed with him. And then at other points, I'm like, this is really, really good stuff. But it was usually brought out with other people. Him alone is like, don't really know.
Does he have a lot of alone time?
Thing is, he doesn't. Well, I mean, all the alone time he really has is really more obsessing with the assassination stuff, and like watching him fail, that was not really fun, because he was genuinely hung up on, okay, he doesn't need to die. We can really change the course of history, and to see him not be able to follow through with that because of the dad too, is just kind of like, it really hit him harder, because it's just like that dad constantly fucking with people is
I guess, but I kind of see it as a point that like he isn't like, he can fixate on stuff, but like that's not the right thing to fixate on. Like saving Kennedy isn't gonna actually like, I can't imagine that that's like yes, things would cosmetically change on the surface for some things, but like the things that are wrong with the world like would continue even if Kennedy got to finish his term. Yeah. And like for their purposes, he feels he needs to stop that, but I don't even know if he knows that it's the explosion that makes people that apocalypse happen. He just thinks, I'm just going to save him. But like, even if that explosion happened and he didn't die, they would still be like, hey, and I think that's what it says. Like, if he lived through that, if Kennedy lived through that assassination attack, he would have been like, oh, those are the fucking Russians that did that to us. And that would have started the apocalypse. So him saving Kennedy actually would have screwed them over in that timeline. Well,
in that timeline. But it's really weird, because now when we're jumping around, because this is the time jumping element of this is something that is very, very interesting, because they're going back to the traditional, like Back to the Future kind of time travel elements where interacting will change everything, right? As opposed to the MCU kind of.
I mean, you say that. I don't know that it changes everything. They just said I think it's better to talk about that with 5, because they give you the 5 things that will happen if you interact with yourself. I don't think changing everything is one of those things.
Right. But for him, I think no, because I remember him being very proud of the idea. Is like, no, I was the one that figured it out. I was the one that was in the commission and saw the future and knows exactly what happened. And for him to be, his point was that, hey, we already changed history by preventing that explosion that Vanya was supposed to do. So we've already changed history. The commission was wrong. That means we can change history again. And he doesn't need to die. I think that was his realization there. So he did know. He was the one that kind of figured out everything, and that kind of like pissed off.
As I said, them in that timeline, he does stay alive. Right. That's the whole thing. So he stays alive to be like, what the hell? Russia's trying to attack us. So them changing history in this thing is just putting it back to where it needs to be by having him be killed. He gets killed in a different area, but he still gets killed. And I think that's what's more. So again, he's focused on the wrong thing. Saving Kennedy in that situation would make things worse.
Yes.
So his realization doesn't mean anything because he's wrong.
Fair enough.
They shouldn't save him in that situation.
Yeah.
They need to keep things going the way it should have gone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm saying. Like his fixation, and this is going to be for everybody. Like they need everybody together to actually be who they should be. Left to his own devices, he's going to think saving Kennedy is the right thing, even though he was already told. I'm pretty sure at that point, or at least the audience knows saving Kennedy is going to ruin everything. But I'm pretty sure he was there for some of those conversations. But
He
he's
was
like, but I
definitely
need
there
to
for
save
that
it.
conversation.
But he's like, but
He
no,
was
I got to
definitely
save
there.
him.
Yeah,
And that's because he's not thinking about the good of everybody. He's thinking of, I live in a world where Kennedy died and everyone's sad. So wouldn't it be great if I saved Kennedy?
Yeah, like he's like that. Like what I'm saying is like that motivation, that selfishness, that like child, like that very juvenile anger part of his nature, that very simplistic part. Like that's a solo thing that he does, and something that you don't root for, but everything that he does with other people. I was rooting for was kind of the point I was kind of getting to. But yeah, I was just kind of wondering if he would have changed things, but yeah, you're right. Anyways, so his stuff was very, very interesting to me. And his look this season was really, really fun because he just kept that really long, shaggy hair for some reason. I loved it.
Who was it? Klaus. That's like, I just want you to know that you look like a sexy Antonio Banderas. Like when he was like, when he thought he was dying, he's like, hold on. I just need you to know you look like a sexy Antonio Banderas.
Yeah, I think it was. Oh God, I can't. Yes, it was definitely him. Because I mean, who else would have that kind of humor?
And I did like when Diego found out that Lila was like a super powered kid too. He's like, but she's not like related to, like, she's not biologically related to us, right? And they're all just like, you idiot, none of us are biologically related.
That was so funny because he just completely omits the Luther and Allison relationship.
Well, no, he's not. I think what he's saying is like, oh, I don't want to be like Allison and Luther, who are like, they're biologically related and they like to get it on. He's like,
right,
because I think he's like, no, I had sex with her. Like, she's not related. I don't want to be like you and Allison, Luther. At first I didn't even catch on to that, but like I just took it as like, oh, he's so dumb, he doesn't realize. And it's multi-layered for me because I'm like, oh, he's so dumb, he doesn't realize they're not biologically related. But I also like that he loves them like as if they are biologically related. Like he still sees them that way. And then there's the other part of, I had sex with my sister. Please tell me she's not actually our sister.
That's funny. I love that.
But yeah, I liked Diego stuff. But again, I liked that this season wasn't like clean. No one was like a clean, like, oh, they did the right thing every time. I like that they're kind of messy because it's a TV show. It's not a movie. So like there's places for them to go still. There's still room for them to grow and be better people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the Diego stuff. And as you said, I liked it because of what he had to do with Lila in particular and just the proximity he had to the handler this season.
Yes. That was very, very funny. Just to see how the handler's like, yeah, it's a very, very much a situation where you can see the handler exercising that whole ideology of like, keep your friends close but your enemies closer with two. Is to say, yeah, all right, I don't like this guy, but I'll keep him around just so I can control him at least, or that kind of thing.
No, she kept him around so she could kill him, and then he just kept.
The end. So she could kill him toward the end, know where he is. But also, do you think she kept him around too to kind of keep tabs on the rest of them? I'm pretty sure that was part of it too, right?
I'm pretty sure she always knows where 5 is. I don't like. That's how she's able to. She's always able to send. Like that was the whole thing with the Swedes. Like she could just send them to where they are.
Yeah.
So I don't. That's I'm not. It's what I like about the handler, but she's not human in that way. Like she's just like, everybody is a tool I can use.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't really feel any way about this. I think, yes, she cares about Lila to the extent of like, this was a success. I took her. I wanted her. And she does exactly what I need her to do.
Uh-huh.
And that wouldn't be the case with Diego, which is, I think, more the reason she was like, yeah, like I want him done. But like she has been able to work with 5 in the past. And so that's why she's like, in addition to needing him to do a very specific task.
Yeah.
I think that's why she's fine to be like, he can be around because and even in this season, she was able to get him to do exactly what she needed him to do.
Right.
Whereas she can't do that with Diego.
Yeah, that's true. Diego's a wild card.
All right, Allison. There's a lot of stuff in this too.
Oh yes.
So she becomes a part of the civil rights movement, the sit-in in particular, which I really liked that scene.
I really enjoyed that.
And I do remember being like, just use your powers, but I understood. She's like, I mean, to the extent that she got married, she's like, I actually have a chance to just reset.
Right.
And I like that she was like, I couldn't even use my voice for a long time. But I was annoyed, but I was like, I understand. Like she said, like, I just want to know that I'm like earning things. Like, I don't like that idea of like, if you can just tell people what to do, then, and I like that although she didn't answer, but he's like, did you rumor, like her husband was like, did you rumor me? I think her husband's name's Ray. He's just like, do you rumor me? And then she didn't say anything. And he's like, and I wouldn't know if you did, right? And she's like, no, you. And I was like, shit, like, I wonder if she did rumor him at any point in their life.
Yeah. That was very, very interesting whether or not she did, because I'm just like, you know, by that point, I'm like, I thought the whole point was you were really making an effort not to do it and really force it down. Like, but her stuff was the most beautiful stuff with her was definitely her being involved with the civil rights movement and all that. It was absolutely wonderful to see that side of it, and how they integrated into it. And you're right, that sheer frustration, even like Ray says, is like, so why can't you use your power to like help this movement? Like, you can do so much and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, there's a frustration with that because you understand why she's not doing it. And you understand all these things, but it's just a sheer level of frustration when Ray realizes, like, what could you have possibly said to that white cop to get him?
That's an amazing scene where he like immediately is like, oh, you're a spy. You're like, you are spying on us, because there's no chance a black woman could get a white cop, or a cop in general, but a white cop, to leave me alone. Like, there's
Correct.
no chance. You have a code, like, you're in on this with them, and you're trying to break us up from the inside. And I was like, that's perfect. Like, that
scene was incredible. Like, and that distance that it puts between them right away, and her being like, yeah, I was right. The people, like, once people find out, they're gonna be like, the life I've built is
no, I don't think that's what happened. I think what she learned is she just needs to be honest with him with what she's doing. Because if you just keep being like, oh no, I just told him to leave you alone, that's the problem. And I was glad, like, because I thought like, oh, is she never gonna tell him? Like, I was like, at this point, like, because at that point she knew like they had like a week or something. I'm like, you might as well just tell this guy like everything. There's no point. Like, what's the worst? Like, he doesn't believe you and he's still mad at you, or he's like, oh, okay, I understand now. Like, you only have something to gain. Like, at that point where he's like, he's not even living with you anymore, you might as well just tell him everything.
And
I'm glad she eventually was like, all right, this is it. And then they have that day together where he like gets to try on the suits. And I love that callback to when to get her in trouble at the sit-in, the guy pushed coffee on her, so she makes him pour coffee on his hand later. I was like, this is great. I was like, and this is something I was thinking about too, is like, maybe she can't stop herself when she starts. That's what's happening. And I get that there was a lot going on in that scene, but I was like, I can see also why maybe she's like, yeah, I don't use the rumor thing a lot, because like once I get going, like, there's no stopping me really.
Yeah, there was definitely parallels. I felt how the way she treated her power and all that kind of stuff, kind of like to drugs, or something, where she was just like, I look, once the ball gets rolling, I can't stop. And I was really trying to be like good, well cut about this, and the idea of where I'm not going to use this. This is my new life. I get to start over. I genuinely wanted that. And yeah, her. And I do like every time she's forced to tell the truth and all that, because those are heavy scenes and a lot of emotions with Ray, and I loved Ray's character throughout this whole season.
He was really good. I love that he's like, I just met like 2 white boys that say they're your brother. Like, what is going on here? Yeah. Like, it really was like, if I were Ray, I would really, and I think that spoke to like doing a lot in a little bit of time of like he loves this woman because like everything is pointing to she's a spy. Like there's a bunch of white men coming around you be like, oh, can I talk to my sister? And like, and she got a cop to stop beating you. Like you would be perfectly within your rights to be like, yeah, I don't trust you. You like you're working for the cops to like screw us over.
Yeah, and
he still comes back to her and he's like, okay, and he hears her out, and then like I think he says the thing of like, I would take this year with you over like a lifetime with anything. Like this still was worth it.
Yeah, his character was really, really good. It was really, really effective, and it really saddens me that we won't see more of his character moving forward. Or my assumption is that you don't see there would be no point in bringing him forward.
No. Because she does have her like. That was one thing I thought was interesting about Allison this year was like you'd never see her daughter. Like I mean, rightfully so. Like you're not gonna see her, but like I like that she was like, I have to go see my daughter. Like we're back now. I gotta go see my daughter. Like, oh yeah, hold on. I'm like,
yep.
Oh yeah, like she has like a life back here. Like,
yep.
She did need to go back, but I was thinking like, yeah, realistically, like she could have stayed. Out of all of them, she could have stayed in the 60s.
She could have. Yeah, out of all, and I want to. And this is hard because I want to jump around and talk about Vanya. When on that point, when you're like stayed in the 60s, I'm like Vanya could have, Klaus definitely could have, or would have.
Because that woman was not, like, as much as in the moment she could be like, oh, I'll go with you anywhere. Like she still had 60s mentality. That wasn't gonna. That was her relationship that was wanting her, and that was gonna go away.
Yeah.
So I don't think Vanya could have stayed because that she was gonna run up against that no matter who she was with. Like
that is true.
That mentality.
Right. No, I was thinking wanting to, confused with.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, because it wouldn't have been logical for her to stay, and it wouldn't have been logical for her to take her partner forward. And I'm glad the partner says that. It's just like, no, I can't go forward in the future. Like 30, 40 years. That's ridiculous. I like that. It was really, really good. Yeah, sorry, I'm a little bit all over the place.
We'll get to Vanya, don't worry. I think
her stuff
what I did like about Allison is she seemed to genuinely be like, I'm just happy to be back around you, Vanya.
Yes.
I do think that was a genuine like I think like Ben as well, but he would have been happy to interact with anyone. But I mean, and I'm not saying he doesn't love Klaus, obviously, but like I think that those were two reunions that I felt like meant something more than just the like, hey, like good to see you, because as I said, as a team, they were still keeping her at a distance.
Yes.
But I do think that her interact, because she doesn't, I don't know, I don't think she says I'm sorry. I think she's just like, I'm happy to see you, and that's when Vanya was like, I'm glad someone is like, at least like finally someone is happy to see me.
Yeah, because everyone's very, very conflicted once they see her, but she's like immediately she just embraces her and all that kind of stuff. And
so I liked that because it did seem like they were close in that way. Like, because wasn't that the tension of the first season? Is that Allison rumored Vanya into being like, I had heard a rumor you don't have powers. Yeah. So I
like the dad was forced her to do that. Mm-hmm. And there was also that, and then the added tension of like, you're my, out of everyone is my brother, you're my sister, and like there's no community between us too. Mm-hmm. There's that added tension, and that kind of exists here too. It's a very interesting dynamic between Allison and Vanya, and how they have an extra layer of complicated distancing because of their just like it is really, really odd for her, because she chooses to be in other places too. She chooses to be with Ray, but well, in all fairness, she didn't know that where Vanya was.
Like I guess if you go into it being like we were all supposed to land together, I guess it just didn't work.
No.
She does say I didn't give up on anyone, but I also can see for Allison in particular, she was swept up in something really important.
Yes, she was. She found home in that, and mm-hmm. she says that she's like, I think there was a scene with her interacting with Luther or someone where they kind of accuse her of moving on because she got married and because she integrated herself within the civil rights movement and all that kind of stuff. And she basically shot back and said something like, "You don't understand. I was just looking to have anyone," kind of deal. Like, and this community found me, and I belonged. So, and it was just kind of like shaming her for finding that during that period of time, which I didn't really appreciate. I would have been like, and I guess that speaks to a kind of misunderstanding of how important the work she is doing in the civil rights movement is around that period of time. Yeah,
I don't really remember them shaming her, but it must have been a Luther thing.
It felt like a Luther thing. But she had some of the most interesting stuff, and the people that were interacting with her were some of the most interesting characters too.
One of the actors, Duchesne Williams, my sister went to school with him. I was a big fan of his. At a school that was terrible with race relations.
Right.
They let him play the lead in Fiddler on the Roof, and I remember before that they let him play Kaniki in Grease, which was a role I auditioned for at that school, and they're like, no, you're black. So I remember like tearing up when he got to play Kaniki. And then like he got to be like the lead for Fiddler on the Roof,
right?
And like he's been in other things since, but it was just nice to see him on this show that I already wanted to watch. Like it wasn't like, oh, I should watch that, Duchesne's on it. I was like, oh shit, Duchesne, all right, like that's way awesome. To go. And I'm not by any means being like, oh, this is the only thing he's done. Like you can IMDb him, he's great. He's been on Supergirl, he's been like he's everywhere. It was nice to see him on this show, which I really like. And I did think that, I don't think there are any like weak actors on this show, realistically. I know some people say they don't like Luther, but like I remember him from Game of Thrones, and the fact that like I don't think he's doing the same thing on this makes me feel like he's a good actor. You might not like his character. Like, Dickon. Like you might not like his character, but like he's obviously doing something different than Dickon.
Yeah, he's doing something very, very different. And I mean, like, to be fair, in his role in Game of Thrones, if you're attached to that, he had how much screen time there versus here. Like, it's just, no, he's Luther to me. He's not Dickon. But I like to laugh at that because every now and then I do remember. But his Dickon. Yeah.
But yeah, that seems to be the Allison stuff, is that she is so intertwined with the civil rights stuff, and she realizes it's in that letter she gives Ray at the end, like, look, like this has to happen, and you got to realize that things will get worse before they get better. Like, I'm not saying I'm leaving and things are about to pick up, like they're gonna get way worse, but like it's a process.
I like the oh my god, I think one of the moments I really, really enjoyed was when she straight up tells him Barack Obama becomes president, or
like a real black guy.
He's like, but a real black, like what do you mean by that? Like he's so in disbelief by that. And
it was weird that she didn't say, I guess he's half. Because I feel like that is what he was asking, but I think that comes down to maybe that wasn't a black writer that was doing that.
Right.
That was the conversation ahead of time before he was nominated, before he became president.
Right.
It kind of has stopped being the conversation, but it was the conversation that he, not that it matters to the people that voted in Trump, but like he is, in that sense, he is mixed race.
Yes.
But yeah, that was good, and I forgot because it's part of that montage, but I loved that they showed that she can actually beat people up too, like when she fought the Swedish people. And that was the thing. I don't really care about getting into the Swedish guys, like the triplets, whatever. I love when she told the main triplet to kill the other guy. I was like, that is good stuff. Like, and
that was hardcore.
Because you just are haunted by that for the rest of his life. And like, I like that he found some peace at the end, but like that was crazy when because I was like, oh, it won't work on him, and I'm like, wow, it is going to work. Why they didn't leave immediately, I will never know. Like, I was like, okay, now time to leave while he's occupied, but they just stayed there. I was like, wow, you really trust that you can beat this guy up again? But I like that, and I think that was to Backstreet's Back, which I guess I realized I just like this song, like that. Like I like that Klaus used it. Like Klaus was doing that all, and he's next, so I guess I'll just leave that for him. But like,
Right.
I liked that needle drop of Backstreet Back, especially to what was going on. Like, because it was
That was
a lot of
yeah,
menacing stuff going on.
that's a lot. Yeah, that was a lot. That was a fun scene for me. I think that's they kind of really it reminded me of what they tried to do with what they did do in season 1 with the Cha-Cha and Hazel scene where they're dancing and like destroying the building and all that kind of stuff. It's like that
With the
it reminded
Queen,
me of that.
was
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
that was a really that scene was so much fun.
That is another complaint I've heard about the show. It doesn't bother me, but I think people are like, "Oh, there's so many needle drops and like it feels more like a music video." But I'm like, I feel like there's enough character stuff in there for me to be like, okay, they're going into their music thing now. I'm not, like, I don't mind. It's not like it doesn't really bother me. But I'm just
I don't think
acknowledging that I hear that is another complaint of the show.
Really? But I don't because I like those things. I think they're
Mhm.
fun. I think they're creative, and they're just like, all right, here we go, and let's like offset this beat.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. I don't think it occurs that much where it's like, oh, every single episode has one. It's not like
I think every single episode does have one actually, but like
Does it really?
not to the not like a fight scene with the music, but like
Right.
there is like a musical interlude pretty much every. And
I
I
see.
wouldn't have noticed that unless someone said it ahead of time.
Yeah, no. To me,
The
if
person who
it
said it
was
to me.
the case, I'm like, I really didn't notice it whatsoever.
Yeah, that's. I think it's because we both like that kind of stuff. So like to me, I'm just
I
like,
definitely like that stuff for sure.
I think it's just like, yeah, that's just part of how they like to tell the story.
Yeah.
I just get used to it. And
It's also like a 40 to 50 or 60-minute episode. I'm just like, there's time in there for you to give me something like that. Like, give
I
me a
will
little
say
bit
that.
of variety in that 40 minutes.
I will say this. I do think that they use their time wisely in all of these episodes
yeah.
as a whole. I don't think there's like, I mean, sure, there's people will always be like, you could have cut this, but like there wasn't anything where I'm like that was a wasted episode. Like sometimes I feel like,
Right.
we were talking, I think it was before we started recording about like the Netflix shows where the Netflix Marvel shows where you're like, this doesn't need to be 13 episodes. Like and even for me, I know not everyone feels this way, but like even for me, Defenders was too long at 8 episodes.
Yes.
It was just like that. I
That
didn't need
should
all
have
of
been
this.
4 to 6.
Yeah, I mean, just for the story they wanted to tell, I'm like, none of those first 2 episodes do not need to happen.
Correct, because they didn't even spend time together. They were apart.
No.
Anyways,
but yeah, that's Allison. She's. You're not going to hear me be like anyone was bad, but I do agree with you so far. Luther might be the weakest, but I do understand that that's not necessarily based on performance. That's just kind of like they didn't want to put their energy there for this season.
Right. Yeah, because it's a story beat that if Luther's too involved with Allison this season, we're basically getting rehashed. I really like.
I'm glad they avoided the rehash of that. It was like,
exactly.
You get it. He obviously cares about her. She cares about him. I loved when they like, I think it was Diego being like, no, you guys have sex. You'd had sex. She's like, we haven't even kissed. He's like, okay, sure, buddy. Like, I like that they still made fun of them, but like, you understand they still care about each other.
Yeah.
In that way. I guess number 4, Klaus.
Yeah. Klaus's stuff was.
He made Destiny's Child or Destiny's Children. That was his cult name, which I found was funny. I love that he used.
I love so much of what he did this season and just quoting song lyrics as
he
wisdom.
Quoted TLC, Destiny's Child.
Oh my god, it was hilarious.
Backstreet Boys, like basically right in our sweet spot of pop music, like our generation's sweet spot.
It was really funny. I loved the whole cult that he did.
I loved when he tried to like save Dave from going into the army. Like that was amazing. Like
that was so heart-wrenching for me. I'm like, oh my god, man, this is.
And he gets punched. Like it is something I've seen before where it's like the person, just the world we live in with that toxic masculinity of like you can't be gay or show any emotions, and so like. The person that's putting themselves out there to be like, I like you, and then the other guy who likes the person back but is forced societally and in the moment by peers to be like, fuck you, I'm no sissy. Like
that need to uphold that image to be like, hey, don't just because you're out, don't out me kind of deal. And in order to not
I
be,
mean, it didn't even get to that point in this book because this was just him
definitely did.
being like,
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. That is
Yeah.
its own thing. This was for me like, because that would be more like, I guess, yeah, then I would agree with the punch. If it was like,
Yeah.
listen, just because you're out doesn't mean you can out me. This was more
Yeah.
like him being vulnerable and him being like, no, I'm standing up for the army. Fuck you, and punching him.
Mhm.
And I get it. That's not how he felt, but that was what his uncle made him do in that
Yes.
moment.
Yeah.
And it was established like 2 scenes before that, like he cares about his uncle. Like that's who he is like looking up to.
Yeah, it's definitely conflicting. It's that care and that like that ideal that because back then it was that exactly that we got to see it, right. It's crazy, but it's I like the idea of like he's at that beginning part where he's like, I love you. Klaus says it genuinely, and and it's interpreted, with, oh, this is a cult leader. He talks about love all the time. So I'm glad that he got to go under that guise and all that kind of stuff. And but it made that punch so much more impactful to me
Mm-hmm.
because he means it like that, but everyone else is hearing it the other way, and it's so powerful to me that punch, because it was just like, oh, it's a heavily conflicted punch, and that scene was incredible.
And then Dave still ends up getting on that bus, which again, I'm fine with, because things need to go the way they actually went and not the way the Umbrella Academy wanted them to go.
Correct.
And I guess that's the third person. Again, Allison has the strongest reason to be swept up in something else, but Diego had his JFK assassination, which he thinks is important, but as we find out, like if he did actually stop it, that would have been a problem.
Yeah.
And now we've got Klaus's like mission to stop Dave from joining the army, because like it's like, I mean, he gets to live with those memories, but it's like he won't like he'd rather them never meet in Dave's lifetime and save his life than to have that selfish moment of like, well, yeah, I'll let him go. And like reality is Dave was always going to go.
Yeah, he was always going to go, and he was forced to go at that point, because you can't get out of that at that point. And it was just, I like especially when we're talking about Klaus, we can't not talk about Ben, but we also have to wait to flesh out Ben in his own right.
But they are back to back. No, they aren't actually back to back. So you're right. We got to wait. But yeah, his stuff with Ben, there was that visual of when he's like, you can take over my body, and him trying to like pull Ben out. Like I love those visuals. Like while they're running.
That was fun.
And like Ben is trying to stay in, and he's like pulling him out. That's great.
Yeah, to me that was a more well done version of the Venom scene, where Eddie and the symbiote are kind of having that kind of dynamic back and forth, and it's just because of the nature of Klaus and how ridiculous that whole thing is, and then how ridiculous Klaus is. It works when it doubles up on itself, and it works so well, and it's so much fun because Ben has it's just such a fun scene where they're like just pulling each other apart from and just trying to take control of his own body. That's a really, really fun thing.
I loved how he just kept being like trying to avoid the cult.
Yes.
Like, I just don't want to be around you guys, and they would just always find him.
Yeah, I mean, his character, he basically avoids all responsibility, which is hilarious to me. Because like his character, like for Klaus, this season is much, much more cohesive for his storytelling, because last season he was just jumping all over to all the different points in time. His emotions were all over the place and all that stuff. This, he's much more unilaterally, like mono tracking here, where it's just like, no, he just wants to avoid responsibility, and ultimately he comes to it, and it's a really, really, the way he's forced into it is really, really fun to me by Ben. He's like, no, I'm just gonna take over your body and then go back to the cult. But I love all the things that Ben does, because he acts like Klaus is conscious, but also is his own character, and that's so much fun for me.
And I would say, much like you said, Klaus's storyline feels more cohesive. I feel like this season feels more cohesive just because there's less jumping around.
Yeah.
in the first season, it is like they're stuck in the 60s. So yes, 5 has to go to the 80s for a bit, but it is like we're in the 60s. We're basically on the same street the whole show. Like that intersection basically gets a lot of face time. And I liked that about it. It was like, don't get me wrong, like it's still a complicated show, but I like that they didn't try to like put too many bells and whistles on like the shifting time lines and stuff. It was just like, this is what's happening.
Yes, and I really appreciated that much more this season. I really did, because as complicated as I already am in this season, as confused as I already am in this season, last season was way worse for me, because you had multiple characters jumping around all over the place. This one, it was just like, it was, yes, you have multiple characters jumping around, but it was to different locations,
Right.
and that was just so much easier to follow, as opposed to like, oh, now 5's here, now Klaus is here, and all this kind of stuff, and this has like, it was just so
for the most part, they're all in Dallas.
Yeah, and just stuck down in downtown Dallas, so to speak. And I love that so much, and that's why I loved Klaus's story this time around, because it's just like, oh, it's easier to follow you, and it's easier to see where everything's going with him. It allowed me to appreciate his character much more. But also, I think the issue with Klaus in the first season was that it took a while for him to grow on you, because before he gets those really big emotional beats, you're just like, oh, you're just gonna be an annoying character. But then it just really builds to the point now where they're talking about, oh, he should have his own spin-off show, whether or not
no thank you.
No, yeah, I think too much of Klaus is not going to be good, but it's just no thank you for that. But his character grew on me much more. It kept growing on me, this character.
Yeah, I like his interplay. But the one thing I feel like every character we're gonna like, the frustrating thing about them was that he never acknowledged Ben to the rest of the group. Like he'd be like, "Oh, all 6 of us here," and I have to say, like, they had me really bummed about Ben until the end, like that last scene, which again, when we get to Ben, we can talk about. But like, I was like, oh, like this really sucks. But like, they used him well this season. Don't get me wrong, but I was just like, oh, this sucks for this actor. And then I'm like, oh, okay, the end saves it for me in terms of being like, okay, good, we can keep Ben around. But like, yeah, I was just like, I don't get how does he benefit from keeping from his siblings that Ben is around?
Well, I mean, it's I don't think that it's that he benefits from it. I just think that he's just being selfish. And that's just sort of shtick.
But I mean, selfish implies that there's something to gain from what he's doing.
Right.
AKA a benefit.
I guess his just own insecurity of being alone, because it's very, very clear, especially in the first season, he hates being alone. He cannot stand it. So you
think if he says Ben is here, then he doesn't get to keep Ben for himself?
Yeah, that Ben is kept exclusively to Klaus and not to anyone else. Like Ben's ability to interact or his attention, and because I'm afraid that, like, to the mentality of maybe Klaus is thinking that if everyone knows Ben is here, they're going to take Ben seriously and only talk to Ben through me. Like, that's the only way they're going to be able to do it. So I'd be essential because I'm communicating with Ben or something like that. I mean, that was just really complicated the way I thought about it, but maybe that's
I think you're probably on something with the whole, like, it becomes less significant that only he can talk to. I mean, they still need to use him as the medium, but it is like now everybody's talking to Ben, and Ben's attention can go elsewhere.
Yeah.
So maybe you're right about that. But I for the life of me could not figure out. I was like, I just say he's there. Like, it won't change. Like, it's not like they can see him, or like, it's just you can be like, he's here with me. You already know what my power is, and I'm here with him.
Because when Ben possessed Klaus's body, it really got him jealous, and it's something that you were to me, he seemed really jealous, and it was very interesting in the beginning, because it was one thing where I'm like, why would you be jealous? You avoid everything. So if Ben took over your body, then you literally are avoiding everything. But it was just the idea of like, no, wait, he's actually just selfish. He wants Ben to himself. And then to me, it was very, very clear in that last episode when things come full circle. You see them as kids at Ben's funeral, and immediately Klaus calling him back,
Mhm.
and then with what he says to Vanya, with what Ben communicates to Klaus through Vanya, it's very much it made me kind of really think, is Klaus just really being selfish with Ben and wants his attention and only
Oh,
is
he
like
was,
that
but
kind of
no, I think you just reminded me. I was gonna keep it for the Ben part of it, but
Yeah.
no, what I think you might have misinterpreted what happened there.
Right.
I think the idea is the whole time he's trying to make something up to Ben. He's annoyed. He is a selfish person, so
Yeah.
it's not as straight through line. But he feels the guilt of keeping Ben from going to heaven and
Yes.
keeping him around. And so that last conversation with Vanya is being like, I was always going to stick around. I needed to help you guys. You don't have to feel bad about that. That's what that conversation was. So
No.
that wasn't him being like, I don't think that was to try and highlight that like he is selfish. It was trying to highlight that he is a flawed person, but his reasoning for keeping Ben around was, I'm going to make this up to you because I stopped you from being in heaven. And then he's getting the information. No, that's not what happened. Like, yes, you brought me back. Or, I mean, maybe that is even saying you don't even have to think you brought me back. Like, I was able to like operate by using you, but I came back to save you guys. And I got to do that.
Yeah.
I got to save Vanya. I got to save the team. And now I'm done. Like, that is what I needed to accomplish. And that's the only reason I was around.
Yeah. I think another element too is like another thing I just thought of, and I don't know how validity is through this, is the idea that he has, Ben, I think one of the more interesting things is early on in the season where Ben refuses to help him out anymore. It's just like, no, I'm not going to help you. Like, you keep getting these stupid decisions and all that kind of stuff. And I thought that was very, very interesting because maybe he was being selfish with Ben, knowing that he will always help him out.
Yes, he was being selfish that way.
Yeah.
As I said, he's a complicated, he's a flawed person. He's a selfish person. So it's not a straight line of like, this is how I can make this up to you, Ben. But also the idea is it wouldn't have mattered anyway because Ben wasn't there to be made up, for it to be made up to him. He was there to save his family.
Right. Yeah.
So even if in that time period he had made it up to Ben, Ben would have still been there. And maybe that's what we were seeing is his frustration of like, look, man, I already made this up to you. Why are you still here?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so complex, that kind of relationship.
This is why I like the show. Like, there's a lot going on here.
Oh yeah, I love this show.
There's a lot of interpersonal stuff that is great, and so that's what that conversation with Vanya and Klaus was. That was absolving him of the guilt that he felt over keeping his brother from going and passing on.
Right. Yeah, that was really, really, really powerful stuff.
But I am looking at the timing, and we should move on to 5 because that's going to be a lot of talking.
Oh, yeah.
So Klaus didn't get to save Dave, but he had the conversation with him and had his real thing of joining the team again in earnest while also learning that he doesn't have to feel that bad about what happened with his brother, Ben.
Yeah.
Boom. Moving on. 5. What an actor, what a character, like what a great time.
5 was so much fun this season. There were so many.
I mean, he's fun in the first season. I'm just saying, like, I'm glad they kept up this like same or better energy this season.
I thought what I meant is I thought he hit his ceiling for how much fun his character could be. And then seeing him and then seeing a like old what he should be version of him interacting and with his mind just temporarily going crazy because of that
was it 5 or 7 things that happened to you? Because there's like
I think 5. I'm not too sure.
5, yeah. Anyway, I don't remember them. I'm not going to list them, but one of them was farting, which I found was hilarious, and then there was the homicidal rage.
Yeah,
that's 5.
It was so much fun. That like, oh god, I could not believe that they could make his character even more fun than it already is. But they did so many things so well with his character, but not overtly. And I'm talking about that the scene where he kills the whole, like, he gets commissioned to kill the whole board.
Yeah.
That had so many like Quicksilver moments to it, but in its own very unique kind of way. It was awesome. It was just so much fun.
I'm just realizing the board isn't those 12 men. So I was right at the top. Those 12 men have nothing to do with what the Handler and the commission are doing.
Yeah.
So yes, he was killing the board of the commission
Yes.
so that the Handler can step in. I almost called her Kay Walsh again. Anyway, yeah. 5, great stuff. I love that he never trusts Lila, because at first I was like, why is he being such a dick to her? Like she's probably one of you guys. You got to help her out. And then by then I'm like, oh, he was right. Like she was there to fuck them over.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I guess that's it. Like they keep reminding you. He's like, you got to remember, I'm older than you got. Like I'm old. Like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm in this body, but I know what I'm doing. I'm smart.
Yeah, that oh my god, him interacting with Luther in those last couple episodes, being like, listen to me. I'm 1 week older than that guy. You should be listening to me.
Yes.
And just the argument of like, and
all of that stuff was so good. The paranoia stuff, where he was just like, he's like, okay, fine, yes, I am being paranoid, but you gotta listen to me.
And even when like the quote unquote young
Yes,
5,
yeah.
which is the older looking guy, he has that other plan to like convince and confuse Luther. That was so much fun. He's like, wait, why would we do that? Why would we just do this? This is easier. He's like, wait, that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
To
And
the
then
point where you're
5 is like, did he tell you to do this? This? He's like, yeah. How did you know? He's like, because that's exactly what I would do.
And the funniest thing was, it was so funny, but I thought it was so effective in how both those 5s were manipulating Luther, where I'm like, I genuinely don't know what you're going to do right now. I don't know if you're
Yeah, I had no, that was very effective. And then like the way they like kicked them in the balls and then started zipping around fighting, that was great.
So much fun. That was so much fun.
But yeah, I think 5 is, as much as we can speak to like all these amazing moments for these different characters, like 5 will probably always be like the standout. Like, and it's crazy because it's not like just like, oh, he can do that one thing that everyone else is like, no, like he can consistently like carry the show, like in that sense of like, he's the one on the mission. Like all of them are kind of settled into what they're doing, and he's already lived that life, so he's the most motivated all the time to be like, yeah, I had my time to like fall in love with a mannequin and like travel the world alone and like just ease into my existence. He's like, no, like this is urgent, like we gotta go, and I like that.
I think it's very effective because especially him, one of the beats with him is him having that experience, him having the knowledge and all that kind of stuff. He kind of becomes a very like a leader in its own right, but not.
He's not a good leader because he's so like, I mean, he gets there, but he's not good because he's just like, that's not important to the mission, so fuck you, I'm moving on.
Exactly.
So that's not great leadership. It's just he becomes the driving force for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's him being the driving force is always so much fun. That's what I was getting to. Thank you for helping me with that thought. He is just so much fun. I can't say anything really bad about him and his interactions with everyone.
I loved all the stuff like where he would be like, no, I'm gonna keep Diego in the asylum just for his own safety. Like it's better if he's there. Like I loved that stuff. I loved everything to do with him and Lila. I'm a big fan of any time he has to interact with the Handler. Like anything he has to do with the commission is always fun because it is like, I think the actor is 15 or 16, but I just buy him as this like grumpy 60-year-old.
I really buy him as a grumpy 60-year-old, especially with who they chose to play the elderly 5, with him being so juvenile in his portrayal of it, which is like, this really works. And I loved it so much. Oh God, I can't talk enough about that one episode because it's so much fun to watch it happen.
They did a great job with that one where he's like, all right, I have to meet myself. But here's the problem. These are the phases I'm going to go through. And I love how Luther be like, you're on 4 right now? He's like, yeah, I'm on 4. He's like, okay, great.
Oh, poor Luther.
He doesn't, does he do much with Allison? I don't feel like he does.
I don't think, no, I don't.
I feel like him and Klaus have limited time together and Allison. Because he's mostly doing Luther stuff and Vanya stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he doesn't. I think it's just because he knows what Vanya's up to, but he's not even there to like try and shut Vanya down in the thing. It's because he's got his own thing going on. He's just a really interesting character. And hold on. No, don't hold on. Let's keep talking. I just need to plug in my computer.
Sure. Yeah, I really love it. I also love the idea of like 2 figuring out exactly how the world ends this time around, not 5, because that really, like, for that brief moment, you're like, oh yeah, that really got to him.
That did annoy him. I did like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed that. It was like, no, it was me that figured it out, not you. Like, damn it, that really annoyed me. Yeah, his character is so much fun, and like, I love that when he tries to take leadership in the beginning. It's like, listen, we had this very, very simple thing. I already did everything. You feel his frustration where it's like, we just missed the window. Everyone was supposed to be here at this one time.
I felt so bad for him on that.
So
He's like,
bad.
I can't believe some of you guys didn't even show up. Like,
Yeah.
fuck you guys.
Yeah, it was
Especially what he had to do to get that thing.
Yeah. And to me, that was so funny because it was just like, you see his cynicism and build more and more and more. And it's so much fun to see that in a 15-year-old kid acting like he's like supposed to be, what, I don't know, a 70-year-old man.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something like that. He's
It's
late
so much
60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
He's just really good at that. I just a side note, I saw him on like BuzzFeed taking which Umbrella Academy character you are, and he was paired with the actor who plays Diego, and it was just funny because he looks like you're so used to him being the leader, but like he just took the lead from Diego on everything. Like Diego would be like, "Oh, I picked this," and he's like, "Me too, buddy." Like, I'm with you.
That is really, really funny. Oh man.
But yeah, I think the biggest thing I can say is I love that they were able to like maintain how exciting that character can be.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like they were just retreading old stuff. I felt like they were just able to continue the momentum from the last season.
I agree. Yeah, just because especially because with what I was saying, complaining about earlier with the time jumping stuff, his easily could have been the most confusing stuff, but it was because it was so, the time jumping stuff for him was so isolated. It was so easy to follow, and I loved it so much more.
Yeah, it was like he gets to the 60s, he's trying to round up his family, and I do feel like he showed his love. That's how he was showing his love. It's like, come on, please, let's do this. Like, and we're going to do it together. Because like at first he even admits, like, I don't even have a plan. I just want to get all of my siblings together, and then we can figure it out. Which is basically what I said at the beginning. Is that's how this works. Is if they're together, they can save the day. But even when they're together, people try to split them up, and usually they're actually like physically apart. But I just like that was kind of his thing, was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know if I get my family together, we can figure this out.
Yeah.
And I really liked that. There was something else I was going to say, but now I don't remember. But I do like that. Yeah, it was just like the one major time jump to the 80s to go get thing. One thing I was going to say, so the Lila stuff, I genuinely didn't realize that he killed her parents. I thought the idea was that the handler was lying when she said 5 killed your parents. I was like, no, he didn't. And then when he was even like, oh yeah, I did kill your parents, but like, so what? He's like, she was there too, and she wanted, and she never goes on to that. I was like, oh, that, like, I was like, wow, like, I guess, yeah, he was their hitman for so long that like, that makes sense. But I was just like, oh, that's, I honestly, because part of me was like, no, Lila can't fall for this trick. But I'm like, no, like, it's just real. Like, he really did kill her parents.
Yep.
And I like that was kind of her thing. He's like, I'm going to fuck you guys up because you killed my parents. Like, I'm going to kill your family and I'm going to kill you. There's nothing that's going to stop me. And again, just the look on Lila's face as she was like using the powers on them. I'm like, this is great. Like, I know we missed it with Allison, but when Allison says, I heard a rumor, and she's like, that you couldn't breathe, I was like, fuck. That was an amazing reveal of like, and I'm sure by that point she'd already shown that that's what she could do, but like, just the way she didn't even have to say, I heard a rumor. It was just like, oh, you started it? I'm going to finish it for you. Like,
that was nuts to me, that bounce back immediately. Cause I'm like, how is she going to be able to mirror Allison if Allison gets to say something first and she just cuts her off immediately? I'm like, oh, that's how. Cool.
I was like, that was amazing. And it happened earlier that she was obviously jumping around, but I was like, I honestly just was like, it didn't occur to me that she has their powers. I was just like, she's just really good at escaping. They already showed her training that, and I think that was also effective writing of showing her training montage. I'm like, yeah, she could get around easily. Like she was trained from like a kid. But then like when she like fully reveals, like, no, I can do exactly what you can do. I was like, this is great. I love this.
Yeah, because with her character the whole season, because of how involved she is, and because she just doesn't get killed off right away, there's something like a bigger piece to the puzzle with her, right? But to her, she's always like, okay, yeah, she's a threat in these very, very isolated situations, and that big reveal at the end was just, it blew me away. It was really, really cool. Like to see, like at first I'm like, wait, you got the Vanya power, cool. Everyone else is, and then she started doing everything else. I'm like, what the hell? That was nuts. And I loved it.
I was a big fan of that. And then
it was funny to me too, because I completely forgot that there were other children that were exposed to that same kind of element that made on that particular day. So like I completely forgot that element of the first season, and I really like that they brought it back in that final episode, because it really did kind of like, it didn't feel cheap to me. It was like genuinely like, oh my god, that's actually really,
it just
really
makes
cool.
sense that they're not the only 7, and that like someone like the handler would have her own ace in the hole.
Correct.
I liked all of that. But for 5 in particular, I liked the callback to like when he first learned how to like time jump, and it's like, why don't you just try like seconds instead of like years? And then that's how he saves the team. Because I will admit, I'm not a big fan of like, oh, they all died. Because like as soon as like 2 of them died, I'm like, well, then obviously this is gonna get reversed.
Yeah.
But I did like that it took something out of him. Like it took him like focusing to like make that rewind, and it still would have ended poorly for him if not for the Swedish person being like, look, I'm out. Like I killed the person I wanted to kill. We're done here. Because he still could have taken them out at that point. So it's not that like he fixed everything, but he did fix a huge thing by not letting them die. Which, if you're going to use time travel, that's always going to happen. I feel like that's always something you can use. It's not my favorite thing, but whatever. Like, especially since they spent so much time dramatically showing them dying, I'm like, but I know they're not going to die, because why would you kill all of them off?
It's just like one death. Okay. That's why like the time the use of the time stone in Endgame was so effective, because it was just one character. You believe it much more, as opposed to the whole team goes down and the one person that's capable of time travel is left. You're just like, oh well, obviously everyone's going to come back now.
Right.
But the Endgame thing, where it's just like, no, one person dies, is so much more effective, because you're like, wait, what? That was a better kind of reversal mechanism. But you're right, like that's always a mechanism that's going to get used in time travel action kind of storytelling.
The good news is they've used it, so I can't imagine they can go to that well too many other times.
Yeah,
hopefully we get a season away from it.
Yeah, I would not enjoy that if they did it again. It has to be some other really, really, really clever version of story, like time travel, where you just like, now instead of that final scene repeats, and now you get a blip of 5 in a scene where he's not, a place where he's not supposed to be, or a different version of 5 or something like that. That's really, really interesting to me. But the kicking of 5 into that 2019 time portal, that was, I don't know where that is probably what led to, I don't know. Actually, no, that's not the case. No, that doesn't make sense whatsoever. Never mind.
I think I know what you're going to talk about, but the next person is Ben, so we can probably talk about it there. And I think we should move on to Ben right now. He's a character I think we both liked in the first season, and I was really excited that they got to like do more with him this time.
Yeah,
including that last scene, which I was just like, yes. But like, I especially like that he had that crush, and when he got Klaus's body, he's like, I'm gonna have sex for the first time. Like this is great. Yep. Like I like that he kind of like lost all his like altruism and was just like, no, I'm gonna have some sex. This is great. But I think we've already talked about his arc in this, is that like he was there to save his family. We might have thought that he was there only because Klaus was keeping him there, but that isn't the case. He was there to save his family, and he has that very touching moment with Vanya at the end, or not at the end, but like to save her, because basically everyone is trying to get into that room to stop her from blowing up the building. And it's Ben who finally gets in there and is like, he goes into her mind and everything. It's like a really nice thing. You see the white violin. And I think that's the idea, is that they're putting that to bed. Like, she won't be that threat anymore.
Right.
She's made peace with that. And I think that's why, like, earlier when you were like, oh, they sidestep a lot of stuff, I'm like, I think this is just, they're telling a story. And I feel like that was her making her peace. Because realistically, yes, a bunch of people telling you I'm sorry for how I treated you is one thing, but like, it is the internal work that you do that like makes you at peace with what's going on.
Yeah, and I thought like that scene was so effective for so many different reasons. The visual imagery of the actual violin and her being trapped within the violin was astronomical. It was really, really cool. But just how effective that acting was by
for Ben, like, and can you hold me when you're going or whatever? Like, that was some good stuff.
Yeah, there was, oh my god, that was crazy to me. That final scene is just the idea of like, I haven't genuinely been able to touch anyone.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, because he even describes that whole like I had sex with her, but I didn't feel any of it. Like he still says that, and the idea of like him being able to actually hug Vanya was great. But the idea that that discussion happened within her, representative of that internal work, that emotional labor that people have to do to fix themselves, or work on themselves, I should say. Was really, really effective, because Ben's character, his dialogue there was not just an apology, but a justification. It was just a reason of like, it's like, how could you be a monster? You're not a monster. You're my sister. Like, we all did this to you. Dad did this to you. That's messed up.
Yeah.
The world, like, I like the narrative in this where it's like, no, we get to admit that things are messed up. We get to admit that things are not okay, and it's not, this was like some shiny kind of way to spin it. I really liked the head on, we're embracing that this was stupid, this is fucked up, and that he was so afraid of your power, and it was his fear that did this to you, not yours. I really liked the way he got through to her with that, because that was really, really powerful. Everyone was like, I'm sorry for my role in this, I'm sorry for my role. And because he was dead, his dialogue with her meant so much more, because he didn't have an active role in suppressing her power then, or not as much as one.
No,
so
he didn't have enough time. He doesn't have as much time. I don't mean enough.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did his fair share of damage, but they got to keep doing it.
Exactly. So that final scene between Ben and her, it felt so powerful for that reason. There was just a genuine, like, this is a narrative that we need to embrace. It's what happened to you is not okay. We need to
I liked that stuff, and I liked what he was able to do with Diego, like how happy Diego was, like, oh, it really is you, Ben, like, that's amazing, like, and their
awesome.
little reunion, that was good.
Who else does he get a reunion with?
I don't think anyone else.
He doesn't get a one with everyone. He doesn't get one with.
No, but and that was kind of what was bumming me out when he was dying. Was like, I'm like, oh, he's gone. Like, so they're just never gonna get to see him again.
Yeah, that really bummed me out. But I've been dead for 17 years. Like, this time at least I get to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Oh my god, like, everything about that scene was so powerful.
It was really good.
Yeah.
I think they used Ben well this season. Again, I say that because I would have still felt like, obviously objectively he was used well, but I would have, it's just like, oh, that sucks that he's gone. But the fact that what it looks like is next season is he's the leader of the Sparrow Academy.
Yeah.
Well, obviously Hargreaves is, but like, just that thing where he's like, Dad, who the hell are these people? I'm just like, oh, this is amazing. Like, thank you so much. I'm so glad he's gonna be in it, and that he's like physically there. It's not like a figment of someone, or I shouldn't say that. We know what he is, but like he's but like
spirit that's only
he can interact with all of them now, and I feel like that would be interesting. Again, it's not that Ben, but it is. I feel like for the actor that must be good too, because then a lot of his stuff would just be like sitting there, even though he's probably physically there with everyone. He can't actually interact with them.
Yeah, and I think another part of it that's really, really cool too is like that Sparrow Ben just what I don't know if it's actually his name is going to be Ben or not, but Sparrow Ben is what we're going to call him.
Mhm.
Whether or not Sparrow Ben is going to have the same powers as the Ben that they know.
We'll find out.
That to me is the really crazy thing. Or does he have a crazier power? That I think is going to be a very interesting part of the next season, and I'm really really excited. So when this is one of those fake out death things where I'm like, I'm not even mad about this.
Well, it's not a fake out death at all.
No,
This is
not a fake out death. I mean, this is a situation where I was pleasantly glad I was misled into thinking this character was so effectively. Well, this character is that.
Yeah, I
character-
mean, to be clear, we're acting like he's just going to be Ben. He isn't. He's a
Correct.
completely different character.
No, this is one
So
of those.
this is more a win for the actor than it is for the character.
What I'm basically saying is like this switcheroo moment is one of those moments where I'm like, yes, I'm into it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Usually I'm not into those switcheroo moments, but I'm into this one.
It's really well done.
Yep.
That has been. Let's talk about Vanya.
Yep.
Boy, does she have a lot to do.
Oh my God, Vanya's
Like,
yeah.
we've talked through a lot of her stuff already, but like the
So
idea that she has amnesia, like I like that. I get that some people might be like, oh, whatever, but like, if you start with her being like, oh shit, like what did I do, and like it just seems like it'll be one note. Like this is you get to do way more character work this way.
Yeah.
You get to be like, she's building it back up in pieces. And yes, there is the moment where it just all comes back to her. But it is like, it all comes back to her when she already has a different sense of self. Well, she doesn't have that she's not in the season being like, I'm a monster. I can't believe what I've done. It's that she's like, oh, look at this peace I've found in this family. And yes, there is the tension with the husband, but it's nothing compared to I killed like an entire planet.
Yeah,
it is. It feels a lot more manageable. Or even if it doesn't feel manageable to her, once all those memories come back, it's like, well, now this really puts things into perspective. Like I liked all of that stuff. I liked that it was like you're starting her basically with a blank slate that she's built something on, and then that gets crumbled. But it doesn't completely vanish, because I think it is because she found some of that piece that she's able to like still work with her family. And I loved that. Like I actually didn't know it was coming, but like when they were like, when she's like, I have to go save my family at the barn, and they're like, that's not important, we're not doing it. I genuinely was like, fuck man, like they just keep shitting on her. Like they were doing it all, and I'm like, I can't believe they're still like, for me, I was just like, it doesn't make any sense to leave her alone. Like you guys should be with her all the time.
Correct.
And I was so happy when they just started one by one coming in the car, and I get it. Like obviously that's what was going to happen, but again, I felt like I was just genuinely engaged with the show, that I didn't see, or I wasn't like calling the shot ahead of time. I was just like enjoying it moment by moment. And I was like, I'm so glad they actually showed up. I was surprised that Luther was the last person to show up, but they made it worth it when he was like, if you make any fat jokes, I'm out of here. Like,
I agree with you. Her character was so well done, and that one episode where you're right, the show pulls you in such a good way because the characters are so engaging that you suspend that belief for a second, where it's like there's only one way this could go, and this is a misdirect with good emotional payoff, like really really good, not with a comedic beat too. It's a really really good, really really well done show, and the characters are so rich. And I think with Vanya, her the stuff that's obviously everyone's got some very very interesting stuff here, but Vanya's stuff about the LGBTQ is uniquely her. And it was so well done to see, like, even in like a barn scenario where you're so isolated from everything, it's still not gonna be okay. And like it was so painful to see that.
I guess you can just see like the perils of that life. Like, again, I shouldn't say it's only happening in the 60s. It's more socially acceptable in the 60s to treat women the way that husband treats his wife. I'm not saying that doesn't still happen today. I'm just saying that people keep that hidden more if it is happening, whereas he can freely be like, yeah, I went to the strip club, like what's the big deal, and like I'm gonna tell you when to talk, and you got to do this and that for me.
The entitlement, and like the there's so many different social issues that this season touches upon that gets so well integrated into it. So that male incel ideology of like, this is what I'm entitled to. This is what, like, I did all this. I did what society told me to do. Like you, and I'm not getting what society promised me, and this is
right, because his wife is with another person.
Exactly.
And I'm assuming it's even more upsetting to him that it's a woman that
Yes.
took his wife. And again, they didn't paint him as this.
They didn't paint
him as a complete monster, only because it does seem like he is legitimately concerned for his son.
Yes.
Obviously, he's going about it the wrong way. He's being reactionary.
Correct.
But I do think that within the boundaries of that trope of a 60s husband, it did seem like there was like I know you don't watch Mad Men, but he wasn't like Don Draper about it of like, I'm completely checked out of this because our son is non-verbally communicating with us.
Right.
And I'm out. Like, he was there, and it did seem like it was at least on his mind, like when he says like, I'm doing what I should have done a while ago, and like I'm gonna get him real help, like I want to get him help. Like, that did seem like, again, I'm not saying, oh, he was a good guy, like there was good people about that. It was just, I'm glad they didn't just make him a complete, like, across the board asshole. He is an asshole, but there is stuff he cares about.
Correct. Because the show does a really good job of de-evolving him and what he does and all that kind of, and building off those kind of things. It really, he doesn't just go from, he doesn't snap and become this monster clear cut. There's a very, very clear unraveling.
He's getting pushed into I mean, again, using those tropes in the 60s, and I mean this cinematically, television wise, like who knows what happened back then. We weren't alive. Like, I'm sure everyone had the multitudes, but it was just like this. In terms of this story, I get how narratively he was pushed to where he was, because he's already a not good person,
right?
But he feels he's good, and he, like, I can see how his thought process is like, well, you forced me to do this. This is happening now.
Right. He's doing it by the societal toxic masculinity narrative.
Yes.
It's like, I've done it according to this book that I was raised in, and which disregards anyone else in that equation, and says I'm entitled to this. And they build into that LGBTQ incel thing in such a fantastic way, that it's and what a period of time to address all these issues. Very, very well written way. We genuinely had all these things going on around that time in such a period of time that was so perfect for the setting of this season, to address social issues, to address, to be able to have areas to put certain characters in, like the drug scene and the cult following and spirituality stuff with Klaus, and
just that Red Scare thing. Like, I really liked when they're like, Vanya, that sounds Russision, and then they speak Russian to her, and she just responds, and she's like, I don't know. I'm like, you're fucked. Like, I don't even know how you're gonna get out of this. But like, again, it was kind of like the Allison thing of like, you must be working for the cops, because that would be a Black American concern, is that they're going to be infiltrated by the cops. And then for the government, like the government of America scare is being infiltrated by Russians, and then you've got Vanya there, who just does have a Russian sounding name, and then is talking to you in Russian. And I was like, there's like no real way out of this. Like, they're gonna get you.
What a great time period to set this whole season in. It was really, really well done, and so complex this whole season, for sure.
I really liked it. Did you want to talk about Reginald Hargreaves? I gotta say, he is a character I just don't really care that much.
I don't care about his character. I really don't.
Even when he was an alien, I was like, I don't know how that changes anything for me. Like, I feel like if I read the comics, he would be a way more interesting character to me. But I'm just like, I got like these 7 other characters, plus the handler, plus like Lila. I don't really care about Hargreaves, and I probably should, but like, it's not a character I spend too much time thinking about.
No, I don't spend too much time thinking about his character. He's a unilateral character, right? He can only do one thing. He's only got one B. He's like, hey, I have this family because this would be super interesting, but I hate children. And it's just like there's no part of him that does well. I mean, there's not enough of him to me that's redeeming enough for me to care about his character. He's not flawed in the sense where he's like Klaus, where he's like, no, he's genuinely just screwed up hearing dead people all the time and trying to escape from that. He's a guy that's just like, I don't like this, but I'm doing it.
Because I mean, the big thing is because he's not human, so like
Exactly.
he just isn't operating that way. But I will say, like one of my favorite scenes, and it was a scene centered around him, was the dinner scene where he invited them all to dinner.
Yeah,
I thought he was amazing in that.
I love
Just
that.
like they're like showing off all his powers, and he's like, yeah. And like you got us, and he's like, I would never do that. I do not like kids. This makes
Yep.
no sense. But they gave him all the information he needed to like dupe them, and I think that's probably how the Sparrow Academy was created. He's like, oh, well, I'm just gonna go get those and not have this arrangement because obviously this arrangement's not gonna work for me.
Yeah, he detests the I guess this free spirited nature of what it currently was, and definitely is like, nope, I'm doing
Well,
this.
yeah, like he knows he needs to break them down. That is it. What is interesting about him is just how he affects the characters. That's kind of why I just wanted to
Yeah.
stay on the main seven.
Oh, for sure.
Um,
Oh, for sure. I think the part of the season where you think he's going to get a little bit of a redeeming note is when he starts interacting with the mom character before she becomes a
Grace,
robot.
yeah.
You're just like, you start to think to yourself, I'm like, okay, you might see a different side of this Reginald Hargraves character through a romantic vibe thing, and maybe he becomes this hard, stiffened asshole because he loses mom and then brings her back as
Because in first season they already showed the love of his life dying in like
yeah,
the 1800s. So I think he's
exactly.
already the hardened person. The
Yeah,
Grace thing might just be like, oh yeah, she's around.
yeah, that's true. It was an opportunity to be like, okay, did he try with Grace, like genuinely, or like what happened? And I completely forgot about the season one love of his life thing. But yeah, it was genuinely like, oh, what the hell? I
Yeah,
don't like his character.
I can't say I don't like. I just don't care. Like it does not. It's not
Right.
like a thing. Like I wouldn't even spend the amount of time you did on. Oh, what's gonna happen with him and Grace? I was just like, I like Grace. I like her because of that connection she has with Diego. And then when you see her not as a robot that's programmed to like Diego, and it feels like even she feels like some sort of connection to Diego.
Yeah.
I like that stuff is interesting to me. But like and again, I like the scene where he's basically like diminishing his kids' or not even achievements, but like humanity
Yeah,
in
he
that
really
scene. He's
does.
like, I don't care. I don't like. What are you guys talking about? All right, I'm done. He's like, number 5. You seem interesting. I want to talk to you for a second.
Yeah. He's like, you're the only one that's reasonable. I'm gonna talk to you. Yeah, that was really really fun to see that scene. But aside from that, like there was nothing else that like the goldfish had me more intrigued than he
Yeah,
did for the most
yeah.
part.
That was weird when she ate him. I was like, it seems like you should have killed him ahead of that. Like she's like, oh,
Yeah,
you've interfered enough. I'm like, yeah. Why wouldn't he interfere? Like, you took
yeah.
his job, but he's gonna try everything to get you screwed over. It was like it's a weird timing for you to be like, oh, I guess I should kill you then. But I
Well,
guess she
I just
wanted him
felt
to
like,
watch what was
yeah,
happening.
I felt like it was one of those situations where it's like, hey, I'm gonna make you watch
Mhm.
the terror that I'm gonna do, and then at some point, I felt like she was just like, yeah, you know what, I'm just gonna kill you now.
Yeah,
And then torment
perfectly
you.
fine. I have no complaints about the handler. I hope she comes back. If she
I
survived
agree.
being shot in the head, I don't care if they just keep bringing her back. I really like that character. She's
I
one of
really
my
like
favorites.
that character because I like how ridiculous the personality is to
Mhm.
what she's
Like
doing.
I just liked her mother daughter, like how they met and like got like in
Yeah.
the hotel and got room service and stuff. Like I could, and I do get that. I firmly believe it's not like a maternal love she has for her. I think she's just like, yeah, this is one of those things that I got that works,
Mhm.
and I like that.
Well, I mean, like she said, she the only thing that she loves is power, right? And
Right.
like as long as her daughter is that powerful, then she loves her because she's powerful. But and the I like that whole thing is like, what do you think is going to happen like the moment she doesn't need you anymore? Like, and that happens like literally right away for her, and that turning point was really really good.
All right, let's rate this. I feel like we've talked it to death.
Yeah, we have.
We've almost
have
gone
for
2 hours.
I'm going with a solid 8 here.
Interesting. I am going with a 9. I think this is a great season. I don't know if I like it more than first season. I probably do, but I don't remember what I gave the first season. Anyway, I love this show, and I hope season 3 comes soon, but I know it won't because of COVID. But still, I love this show, and I thought it was really well done.
Yes, it was exciting to review something new for the first time in months.
So that's that, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. As Ben said, we are part of the That Shelf Podcast Network, so please head on over to thatshelf.com. You will find other podcasts like Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, No Budget Nightmares, What a Great Theme Song, and more. So please head on there. And if you'd like to hear older episodes of Spoiled Rotten, we are at tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. And on Twitter, we are at tdfspoiled. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Radio Public. I think we're going to be on like Alexa and whatever, Amazon Music or whatever. So there's ways to listen to us. So please head on over, rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends.
Yep.
Thank
Let
you
them
very
know
much,
what we
Russell.
think.
Yes. All right. Yeah, please let us know what you thought about Umbrella Academy Season 2. Hopefully you liked it, or else you will hurt my feelings. Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.